They called him powerful, they called him successful, they called him untouchable, but no one ever asked if he was happy. Alexander Crown stood in the center of a glittering ballroom, surrounded by crystal lights, polished marble floors, and people dressed in wealth. Laughter echoed around him. Champagne glasses clinked. Compliments floated endlessly in his direction. Yet none of it reached his heart. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every handshake felt calculated. Every word spoken to him came with an invisible price tag. To the world, Alexander was a billionaire genius, a man who had conquered industries before the age of 40. But inside, he felt like a stranger in his own life. As he looked around the room, he noticed something unsettling. People didn't look at his face when he spoke. They looked past him, at his name, his status, his power. He smiled politely, nodded respectfully, and played the role they expected. But deep inside, a quiet emptiness grew louder with every passing second. Across the room, a waiter stumbled slightly while serving drinks. His suit was worn, his hands trembled. A few guests laughed under their breath. One woman shook her head in disgust and whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "Honestly," she said, "poverty is so embarrassing. Some people just don't belong in rooms like this." Laughter followed. Alexander's smile faded. Not because of the words, but because no one defended the man. No one even noticed him as human. The waiter apologized softly and walked away, eyes lowered. In that moment, Alexander felt something crack inside him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shocked. He was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of being admired but never known. Tired of living in a world where worth was measured by wealth. Later that night, when the gala lights dimmed and the applause faded, Alexander stood alone in his penthouse apartment, staring out at the city below. New York glittered like a crown of diamonds, and yet, he felt poorer than ever. His phone buzzed with messages, business deals, invitations, praise. He ignored them all. For the first time in years, silence filled the room. And in that silence, a dangerous thought formed. What if everything he believed was a lie? What if the world didn't love him? Only what he owned? What if, without his money, he didn't exist at all? The thought scared him. But it also awakened something he had buried long ago: truth. The next morning, Alexander made a decision that would change his life forever. He would disappear, not from the world, but from privilege. He would strip away the suits, the cars, the assistants, the credit cards, the reputation. He wanted to see how the world treated a man with nothing, not as an experiment, not as entertainment, but as a search for meaning. Because deep down, Alexander knew something most people never dared to admit. If no one could love him without his wealth, then maybe he didn't know who he truly was. And so, quietly, without announcements, without witnesses, a billionaire prepared to become invisible, not knowing that in losing everything, he was about to find the one person who truly mattered. The first thing Alexander noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that happens when people decide you are not worth their attention. He left behind the penthouse, the tailored suits, the polished shoes. In their place were simple clothes, worn sneakers, and a quiet anonymity he had never experienced before. For the first time in decades, no one opened doors for him. No one greeted him with rehearsed enthusiasm. No one cared. On the subway, he stood among strangers, pressed shoulder to shoulder. Conversations floated around him, but none included him. Eyes scanned past him as if he were part of the wall. He watched a businessman step into the train. Perfect suit, expensive watch. Immediately, someone offered him space to sit. Alexander almost smiled at the irony. Just days ago, that man would have stood up for him. Now, he was invisible. At a small cafe, he ordered the cheapest item on the menu. The cashier barely looked at him. When he asked for water instead of bottled sparkling mineral, her polite tone faded into impatience. Behind him, a well-dressed couple received warm smiles and cheerful conversation. He received a number scribbled carelessly on a receipt. That afternoon, he walked through the city with no destination. For years, every hour of his life had been scheduled. Now time stretched endlessly before him. He passed storefronts he once owned shares in. No one recognized him. And for the first time, he felt the weight of what it meant to have no visible value. By evening, the cold crept in. The city felt different at night without a driver waiting nearby. The lights were harsher, the wind sharper. He found himself standing outside a small community kitchen. A modest sign read, "Free meals, no questions asked." He hesitated. He had funded charities before, signed checks with confidence, smiled for photographs beside donation plaques, but he had never stood on this side of the door. Inside, the room was simple. Folding tables, warm soup, quiet conversations, no chandeliers, no marble floors, just people. Some looked tired, some looked defeated, some looked like they were one bad week away from losing everything. Alexander joined the line. He expected stares, judgment, maybe even shame. Instead, no one cared until she noticed him. She stood behind the serving counter, sleeves rolled slightly, hair loosely tied back. There was nothing extravagant about her appearance. No designer labels, no dramatic makeup, just steady eyes. She saw him, not the way others glanced and dismissed him. She looked directly at him, as if he were worth acknowledging. "First time here?" she asked gently. Her voice wasn't suspicious. It wasn't pitying. It was simply kind. Alexander nodded. She handed him a bowl of soup and a slice of bread. "You don't have to explain anything," she said softly. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes." The words landed differently than compliments at a gala ever had. There was no hidden agenda in her tone, no attempt to impress, no calculation. He sat down at a small table, the steam from the soup rising slowly in front of him. For a moment, he simply held the bowl, feeling its warmth. No one had served him like this in years without expecting something in return. After a while, she approached his table again. "Is it okay?" she asked. He looked up, almost caught off guard by the sincerity. "It's good," he replied honestly. She smiled, not the polished smile of high society, but one that reached her eyes. "I'm Ellie," she said. Ellie. The name felt simple, grounded. He considered giving his real name, the one printed in headlines, the one attached to skyscrapers. Instead, he paused. "Alex," he answered, "just Alex." For the first time in his adult life, his name carried no weight, and strangely, it felt freeing. They spoke for a few minutes. Nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary. She asked if he had family in the city. He said not really. She didn't press. She didn't judge. She didn't look at his shoes or try to measure his worth. She simply listened. As he left that night, the cold didn't feel as sharp. Something had shifted. For days afterward, he returned. Not because he needed food, but because he needed something he had never truly experienced before. To be treated as human, without status. Outside those doors, the world still brushed past him. But inside, there was warmth. And in Ellie's quiet presence, Alexander began to realize something unsettling. The world didn't change when you lost money. It changed when people decided you no longer mattered. And yet, one person had decided he did. He didn't know it yet, but that simple act of kindness would become the most valuable thing he had ever received. Alexander began returning to the community kitchen without thinking about it. At first, he told himself it was convenience, then routine. But deep down, he knew the truth. He came back because of Ellie. She never treated him differently from anyone else. Not on the days he looked tired, not on the days he barely spoke, not even when the room was crowded and chaotic. She always noticed him. Sometimes she asked how his day had been, sometimes she didn't. She seemed to understand that presence didn't always require words. They talked in small pieces, never rushed, never forced. He learned she worked part-time at a bookstore nearby. The rest of her time, she volunteered here. Not because she had extra money, but because she believed no one should feel invisible. "I know what that feels like," she once said quietly. Alexander didn't ask her to explain. But one evening, as the kitchen emptied and the sun dipped low, she spoke anyway. She told him she had lost her parents young, that life hadn't been gentle with her, that she had once tried to fit into wealthier circles, thinking success would protect her from pain. Instead, she found something worse. They smiled, Ellie said, but only when I agreed with them. Only when I made myself smaller. She paused, stirring a pot slowly. When I couldn't keep up, they stopped seeing me. Her words hit Alexander harder than she knew. He had lived his entire life on the other side of that divide. They think kindness is weakness, she continued, and silence means you have nothing to say. She looked at him then. But some people are quiet because they've learned to listen. Alexander felt exposed, not because she knew who he was, but because she understood something he had only just begun to see. Outside that room, he was ignored. Inside it, he was heard. They started walking together sometimes after closing, just a few blocks. Nothing dramatic. The city felt softer in those moments, less demanding. Once, as they sat on a bench near the river, Ellie watched the water move and said something he would never forget. The world doesn't reward quiet goodness, she said, but that doesn't mean it isn't valuable. Alexander stared at the lights reflecting on the surface of the water. For years, he had chased admiration, applause, recognition, and yet, here was a woman who asked for none of it. He realized then that Ellie had been ignored not because she lacked value, but because she refused to trade her humanity for status. As days passed, his feelings deepened. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily, the way real things grow. He found himself wanting to protect her from a world that overlooked people like her. But he also feared something, the truth, because every conversation carried a weight he hadn't anticipated. She trusted him, not his name, not his background, not his potential, him. And each time she smiled at him without expectation, the lie grew heavier. He told himself he would reveal everything soon, that he just needed the right moment. But moments kept passing, and the longer he stayed, the more he realized something terrifying. If she knew who he really was, she might never look at him the same way again. One evening, he overheard two volunteers whispering nearby. "She's wasting her time," one of them said. "She's too good for this place." Ellie didn't respond. She just kept working. Alexander watched her quietly, something tightening in his chest. The world had ignored her kindness, overlooked her strength, dismissed her worth. And in doing so, it had nearly ignored the most valuable person he had ever met. He didn't know how much longer he could hide, but he knew one thing for certain. Ellie had seen him when he had nothing, and whatever happened next would test whether truth could survive love. The invitation came quietly. Ellie almost didn't accept it. A large charity gala needed extra volunteers. Formal setting, high-profile guests, a chance to raise funds for community programs. She hesitated, holding the envelope in her hands. "I don't really belong in places like that," she said softly. Alexander wanted to tell her the truth right then. The words rose to his lips, but fear held them back. "Maybe that's exactly why you should go," he said instead. The night of the gala arrived wrapped in lights and luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. Elegant music floated through the air. Dresses shimmered. Suits moved with confidence. Ellie stood near the serving area, dressed simply, doing her job quietly. She felt the familiar distance return, the invisible wall between those who belonged and those who served. Then the room shifted. The conversations lowered. Heads turned. A ripple of recognition moved through the crowd like electricity. Ellie didn't understand why at first. Then she saw him, Alexander, but not the man she knew, not Alex. He walked in wearing a perfectly tailored suit, posture steady, presence commanding. People stepped aside. Smiles appeared instantly. Hands reached out to greet him. Whispers followed him. "That's Alexander Crown, the billionaire, the CEO." Ellie felt the air leave her lungs. Her mind raced, searching for an explanation that didn't exist. The man who stood in front of her was powerful, admired, untouchable. And suddenly, every memory felt fragile. Every conversation replayed itself in her mind, now stained with doubt. He spotted her. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything froze. The crowd faded. The music blurred. There was only silence. He took a step toward her. She stepped back, not in anger, but in hurt. She didn't say a word. She didn't wait for him to explain. She turned and walked away. Alexander stood frozen as the weight of his silence finally crushed him. For the first time since beginning his experiment, he felt truly exposed, not as a poor man, but as a liar. The gala continued around him, laughter and applause echoing like noise from another world. But Alexander heard none of it. He left early that night. Days passed. Ellie didn't return to the community kitchen. Her absence was louder than any rejection he had ever faced. He searched for her, at the bookstore, along the river, in every quiet place they had shared. Finally, he found her sitting alone near the water, watching the city lights tremble on the surface. She didn't look surprised to see him, just tired. "I didn't need you to be rich," she said calmly. "I needed you to be honest." Alexander swallowed hard. "When I had nothing," he said, "you treated me like I mattered." She looked at him then, really looked. "And when you had everything?" she asked. He had no answer. The silence between them felt heavier than any crowd. This time, it was Ellie who turned away. And for the first time in his life, Alexander understood what it meant to lose something priceless. The city moved on. It always did. Traffic flowed, meetings continued, deals were signed. The world never paused for regret. But Alexander did. For days he avoided the penthouse, the office, the noise. He stayed in a quiet apartment, surrounded by nothing but the echo of his own thoughts. For the first time, wealth felt useless. He replayed every moment with Ellie, not searching for mistakes but understanding. She hadn't been angry. She had been disappointed, and that hurt more than any rejection he had ever faced. He had spent his life believing that power gave him control, but now he realized the truth. You could buy loyalty. You could buy attention. You could even buy forgiveness. But trust had to be given freely, and he had broken it. One afternoon, Alexander walked past the community kitchen again. The doors were open, the same sign hung outside. Free meals, no questions asked. Inside, things looked the same. But without Ellie, the place felt different, quieter, hollower. He sat at a table, staring at a bowl of soup he didn't touch. For the first time, he wasn't there to observe the world. He was there because he needed it. That night, he made another decision, not to hide, not to pretend, but to take responsibility. At the next public charity event, Alexander stood before cameras, donors, and executives. The same people who had once laughed behind polished smiles. This time, he didn't speak about profits. He spoke about people. He talked about how easily society dismissed those without status, how kindness was overlooked, how value was confused with wealth. Some faces shifted uncomfortably. Others avoided his gaze, but he continued. "Character," he said, "is revealed when there's nothing to gain." The speech went viral. But Alexander didn't celebrate, because the one person he wanted to hear it wasn't watching. Days later, he found Ellie again. Not with promises, not with explanations, but with honesty. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly. "I only want you to know you changed me." Ellie listened. She didn't interrupt. When he finished, she spoke. "I never wanted to be chosen because I was different," she said. "I wanted to be chosen because I was enough." Alexander nodded. "So was I," he replied, "and I didn't know it until I lost everything." They stood there in silence, not reconciled, not broken, just real. For the first time, their connection wasn't built on illusion. It was built on truth, and truth, unlike money, had the power to heal. Time passed, not in dramatic leaps, but in quiet understanding. Alexander didn't try to return things to how they were. He knew some doors, once closed, were meant to stay that way. Instead, he changed the direction he was walking. He stepped away from rooms filled with empty praise and toward places where presence mattered more than status. The community kitchen expanded, not with grand announcements, but with steady support. New programs opened. More people were fed. More lives were seen. Ellie didn't take credit. She never had. She continued showing up. Sleeves rolled, voice gentle, eyes steady. But this time she wasn't alone. Alexander worked beside her. No cameras, no speeches, just quiet effort, side by side. People began to notice something unusual. A billionaire who listened more than he spoke. A woman who led without asking to be admired. They didn't try to define what they were to each other. They let it grow naturally. Trust rebuilt itself slowly. Not through words, but through consistency. One evening, as they locked up together, Ellie looked at him and said something simple. "You didn't come back as someone important," she said. "You came back as someone honest." Alexander smiled. "And you never changed," he replied, "even when the world tried to overlook you." They walked along the river once more. The city lights shimmered, just as they had before. But this time, neither of them felt small, because they had learned something rare. That wealth wasn't measured in numbers, that love wasn't proven through sacrifice alone, and that the most powerful thing a person could offer was to truly see another human being. Somewhere in the city, people continued chasing status, continued measuring worth in titles and bank accounts. But in one quiet corner, two people built something far richer, a life rooted in truth, a love grounded in dignity, and a legacy not written in money, but in meaning. Thanks for watching. Please, it will be a great thing to subscribe to our channel.